Hello, I am Mireille Choyu, and I chose to present the work that I did for the Tech Recruiter Challenge this way to you. So, before I start, I'd like to give you some information about myself that I think is relevant to the content of this presentation. First off, I've worked for Indeed for 11 years. This gives me access to a lot of research that me and my team have done about the Dutch labor market and the job seekers. For this project, I've tried to use as much publicly available information as I could, and I've added links to the resources that I used in the last two slides. However, of course, there's information stored in my head that I've used, and specifically around what Dutch job seekers are looking for in their job search. Another heads up I wanted to give is that this is my good enough effort. I could have spent another 5 hours on this project and the result would have been much flashier and more detailed. But I'm hopeful that this attempt gets across my approach and thinking process as well as my answers to the questions. All right, let's get started. So I decided to pick a real job in the Netherlands from the Landing.jobs site, and that is the cloud engineer job by the Creative Group. You can link to the job in the upper right corner if it's still live. I figured that this would give me a way to work with realistic data points such as salary, company culture, hard and soft skills. On to the first question. What to do when there are not enough candidates? Well, my thinking was that if there are not enough candidates, why is that the case? What is the cause? So it's key to investigate and address potential issues first. The job description could be improved, perhaps. There are several methods to do this, including looking at similar jobs on other sites, doing keyword research to make sure the right lingo is used, and testing the text with current employees in similar roles. Maybe the salary is missing or off. There are even tools on the market that can remove bias so as to attract a more qualified and diverse candidate pool. Then, is the job being found? What traffic is it getting? Is it placed via the right channels and communicating to the right communities? In other words, are you reaching the right audience? Furthermore, it's important to check for technical issues. Is something broken in the application process? Is it too long? No one likes to have to click a lot or fill out repetitive information, which actually happens all too often. Another aspect to look at is the employer brand on sites such as Glassdoor, or even just by doing a simple Google search. What is the ranking? Can it be improved with SEO or advertising? So, just a few things to look at the start. Then I moved on to thinking about how the pipeline can be increased. And I came up with outbound and inbound methods as described in the next slide. I did some keyword research with the Google Keyword Finder, and this helped me find associated keywords and channels to use, which I've used later on in this presentation. Lastly, I was thinking that it may be useful to put together a persona for the ideal candidate to help tailor the language and the channels. One way to get some more information is to interview current employees in similar roles to get an understanding of their interests and hobbies and such. Okay, so here's an overview of outbound and inbound ways to increase the pipeline. Internal sources can be an existing database and, of course, the recruiter's personal network. External sources are CV databases from companies such as LinkedIn and Indeed. Partnering with colleges can be useful as the student body is receptive to job openings. With respect to increasing online traffic, this can be done in various ways, such as posting jobs for free on job boards, linking from college sites, and SEO optimization. There are always paid options through search engines and other types of ads as well. So to familiarize myself with the cloud engineer demographic, I used Google and Keyword Finder tools to uncover meetup groups and other communities with Dutch people. I also looked at similar job posts from other companies to better understand the job requirements. Furthermore, I contacted some people in my network to see if I was missing any major user groups. This slide shows the resulting keywords and channels that I found. And with this knowledge, I can target this specific group of people where they are in their own language. This is not an exhaustive list, but it's a good start. Question 2. I was asked to write a message in Dutch. So any such message would have to match cultural values and highlight the unique selling points of the cloud engineer position. I know from UX research that Dutch job seekers value work life balance, reasonable commutes, and the opportunity to develop and advance. Beyond the actual salary, Dutch employees care most about pension, reimbursement of commuter cost, and education expenses. Selling points for this particular jobs are the level of seniority, which translates in a lot of responsibility and challenge. This role also offers the opportunity to guide and lead. The company culture seems to be dynamic and welcoming innovation. Furthermore, Amsterdam is easy to reach by highway and public transport. I think the message should be catchy and connect with the applicant journey and lingo. It should communicate the company culture and include a clear call to action. A testimonial from a current employee would be very effective to show what the culture is like, thinking that that would be a somewhat unbiased source. This is the message that I wrote. It's an email message. It is written to be reused to reach out to potential candidates, in this case via the Linux meetup group. It would, of course, be more personalized when addressing a certain individual about whom a lot more information is known. When written for an ad or other medium, the text would be shorter, more like bullet points. All right, third question. What is useful information before engaging with the candidate? Well, here I was thinking it's important to gather information about the market, the employer, and the candidate. With respect to the market, of course, I'd like to understand the market conditions. And as far as the employer goes, I came up with a lot of questions, and they revolve around company culture, plans, growth paths, salary expectations. Feel free to read them at your leisure. With respect to candidate information, before connecting as a recruiter, I could already assess whether they match up with the essential requirements and what they're interested in from their social media. Do they know people at the company already? Where do they live? What is their work history? And based on this, I could also figure out whether their salary expectations will align. All right, many factors are taken into consideration when choosing the channels and communities to connect with in order to find the right candidates. In general, one could say that a mass communication channel generates a lot of leads, but perhaps they will not be very qualified. On the other hand, targeting the right audience may require a lot of advertising dollars, or at least a lot of effort, to tailor the message to the specific demographic. I would say the choices are determined by the urgency and the available budget for this role. In the next slide, I have attempted to put together an overview of the various platforms according to reach to get a holistic view. You can read through this yourself if you like. It's not rocket science. And not surprisingly, the channels in the Netherlands do not deviate much from those in the US. The Dutch are known for their rapid adoption of new technologies, so sites like LinkedIn and Facebook were hugely successful when they first launched. Both the internet and mobile phone usage in the Netherlands rank among the highest of the world. The next slide tries to convey similar information in a more visual way, and it illustrates even better that the decisions around which channels to use depend much on the degree of urgency and the available budget and resources. So I've put this together kind of for my own visualization, and it became clear to me that colleges stand out as a channel because of their great combination of low cost and niche audience. Building and maintaining such a network is not entirely free, of course, as it costs time and effort. However, the engineering student body seems to be a very attractive audience, especially for entry-level roles. Networking is also up there in terms of in terms of the nice cost audience ratio. And I definitely put a lot of energy in that channel to generate qualified applications. And the email that Rita sent me, she encouraged me to think outside of the box. I was thinking of generating a brand campaign, for instance, on TV. It'd be a lot of fun and probably a lot of traction, but it doesn't make sense to invest so much money for what I expect will be a relative low return on investment in terms of qualified applicants. An interesting avenue to explore would be advertising with the preferred companies that came out of the keyword research on music or gaming platforms, or even in apps that are popular with this demographic. I did not explore this further, but I'd say it's worth to test that route to see what the return is. Lastly, question 5. What should be shared with tech talent to make the recruitment process successful? So, I would think that the recruiter's role is to facilitate communication between the candidate and the hiring manager. I know that's a little bit different from the question, but I do think it's important to also prepare the hiring manager and share the findings, my findings about soft and hard skills and why I'm proposing this specific candidate. Also, I could help the hiring manager with interview questions and help them assess whether the candidate is a good fit. With respect to the candidate, I would say I could help out making sure that their technical skills are up to date, give them tips where they can practice interviewing, talking points, role play, anticipating questions, doing their research on salaries so they can negotiate with respect to a realistic salary, assess themselves whether they're a good fit for the role. And I found some tools on landing.jobs to do that. And I would also share the steps of the application process so they know what to expect. When there is a relocation situation, there are a lot of additional factors to consider. Legal and cultural differences, living expenses, which can be vastly different in different countries. And I have found that it's useful to connect in advance with expat groups to get an understanding of what it is like to change, to move from a different country. So we finally came to the end of my presentation, and I wanted to take the opportunity to remind you that I bring 11 years of experience from Indeed to this job, which means that I'm coming from a unique perspective, and it may not necessarily be industry standard. I have a great track record interviewing people, and I want you to know that I get great joy when I see my hires flourish in their job, and I hope I can make that happen for the companies that use landing.jobs as well. The last two slides, list all the resources that I consulted for my research on this project, and I hope you don't mind that many of them come from Indeed. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I'll be sending all the files, and I hope to hear from you soon. Thank you so much for your time.